Hey everyone, and welcome back. I want to start with a question. One that I'm willing to bet has crossed your mind more than once. Maybe it was late at night, when the world was quiet, and your mind started to wander. Or maybe it was during a long, boring meeting, or a mindless scroll through social media. The question is simple, but it hits hard. What's the point? You feel it, don't you? That hollow, buzzing sensation. That feeling of just going through the motions. You wake up, you go to work, you come home, you eat, you sleep, and then you do it all over again. You're chasing something, a promotion, a new relationship, a certain number of followers, a new car. But deep down, you have this nagging suspicion that even when you get it, the feeling of emptiness will still be there. You're feeling lost. You're looking for a map, a guide, a rule book for how to live, but all you find are more questions. If that sounds like you, if you've ever looked at the vast, uncaring universe and wondered what your small, fleeting life could possibly mean, then you're in the right place. Because today, we're not just going to talk about that feeling of being lost. We're going to look for an answer, not an easy answer, not a simple one, but a profoundly liberating and powerful one. We're going to talk about existentialism. Now, I know what you might be thinking. Existentialism. Isn't that all about being depressed and wearing black turtlenecks? Isn't it about despair and the meaninglessness of everything? And to be fair, those are the stereotypes. But I promise you, that's not the whole story. In fact, if you truly understand it, existentialism isn't a philosophy of despair at all. It's a philosophy of fierce, radical hope. It's the philosophy for people who feel lost, because it gives you the ultimate power. The power to create your own map. It's a philosophy that says the answers you're looking for aren't out there in the world, waiting to be found. They're inside you, waiting to be created. So, let's take a deep breath. Let's get comfortable, because over the next hour or so, we're going to dive into the minds of some of the most brilliant and rebellious thinkers in human history. Jean, Paul Sartre, Albert Camus, Simone de Beauvoir, and we're going to find out what they have to say about the very human experience of feeling lost. And by the time we're done, I hope you'll have a new perspective and a new way to see the world. A new way to see yourself. So, where do we begin? We begin with the most fundamental concept in all of existentialism, you. A concept that completely flips our traditional understanding of what it means to be human. It's a phrase coined by Jean-Paul Sartre, and it's this: existence precedes essence. Now, that might sound like academic jargon, but it's actually incredibly simple and incredibly powerful. Think about a coffee mug. The person who designed that mug had an idea in their mind first, right? They had a plan. They knew what it would look like, what it would be made of, and what its purpose would be to hold coffee. That blueprint, that purpose is its essence. And that essence existed before the mug itself did. The mug's essence precedes its existence. But what about you? What about me? Was there a blueprint for us? A grand plan written out somewhere? A predetermined purpose? Existentialism says no. It says you were born, you came into existence, and only after that did you start to define yourself. You are not a coffee mug. You were not created with a purpose. You exist first, and only then do you create your essence. You make your own purpose. This idea is both terrifying and exhilarating. On one hand, It means you have no predetermined destiny. You can't just follow a set of instructions. The world doesn't come with a manual. You are completely and utterly free. And that leads us to the second core concept, radical freedom. Sartre famously said we are condemned to be free. Think about that word, condemned. It's a powerful, heavy word. Why would freedom feel like a condemnation? Because with freedom comes responsibility. Every choice you make, no matter how small, from what you eat for breakfast to what career you pursue, a choice that defines who you are. And since you are completely free, there's no one else to blame for your choices. There's no one to hold responsible for who you become. Only you. And that responsibility, that weight of all your choices, leads us to the third core concept, angst. Now, the word angst, or dread, or anxiety in this context, isn't the same as the nervous feeling you get before a big presentation. Existential angst is the deep, unsettling feeling that arises when you fully grasp your radical freedom. It's the dizzying sensation you get when you realize you are the author of your own life, and there's no one else to write it for you. It's the feeling of total responsibility. You are standing at the edge of a cliff, and there's nothing stopping you from falling but your own will. That feeling of being totally untethered, totally free, is what the existentialists call angst. It's a fundamental part of human experience, not a sign of a problem, but a sign of consciousness. So, to recap the basics, you exist first. You are completely free to define yourself, and that freedom gives rise to a feeling of deep responsibility or angst. But we haven't even gotten to the most famous existentialist idea yet. We haven't talked about the concept that truly makes sense of our feeling of being lost. We haven't talked about the absurd. The absurd is a concept championed by Albert Camus. It's the central conflict in his philosophy. The absurd is born from the collision of two things. On one side, you have us, human beings, with our deep, insatiable desire for meaning, for purpose, for order, for clarity. We want the universe to be a story with a hero and a villain and a clear moral. We want to know why we're here. But on the other side, you have the universe itself. And the universe is silent. It's indifferent. It offers no answers. It's not evil or malicious. It's simply a vast, cold, meaningless place. The absurd is the friction between these two things. It's the constant, unresolvable conflict between our desire for meaning and the universe's lack of it. It's the paradox we live in every single day. The feeling of being lost is a symptom of this absurd condition. You are a meaning-seeking creature in a meaningless world. So if we accept this, if we look at the absurd in the face and say, okay, that's the truth, what do we do? Camus presents us with three possible responses to the absurd. The first is a physical escape suicide. If the world is meaningless, why bother? Why not just end the struggle? Camus rejects this outright. He argues that suicide is a denial of the absurd, not an engagement with it. It's a way of saying, I can't live with this, rather than finding a way to live in spite of it. It's the opposite of a rebellion. The second response is what Camus calls philosophical suicide, or the leap of faith. This is when we deny the absurd by creating an external, manufactured meaning. We turn to religion, or a rigid ideology, or a pre-packaged belief system that gives us all the answers and relieves us of our responsibility. We leap from the cliff of the absurd into the arms of a comforting, but ultimately dishonest solution. Camus also rejects this. He says it's a form of escapism, a refusal to live with the full truth of our condition. It's a way of lying to ourselves. This leaves only one option, the one that Camus believes is the only authentic response. And it's the most powerful one. It's rebellion. What is this rebellion? It's not a political revolution or an act of violence. It's a personal, philosophical rebellion. It's the act of living life to the fullest, of embracing every moment, of finding joy and passion and love, even while knowing that the universe is silent. It's living with our eyes wide open, facing the absurdity without blinking and saying, I will not give up. I will live my life to the absolute maximum. I will create my own value. And this brings us to the most famous image in all of existentialism, the story of Sisyphus. You know the myth. Sisyphus, for his arrogance, is condemned by the gods to push a massive boulder up a hill, only for it to roll back down again every time he gets it to the top. He is doomed to an eternity of pointless, repetitive labor. Most people see this story as a symbol of despair. But Camus saw something else. He saw the ultimate absurd hero. He saw Sisyphus as the perfect metaphor for the human condition. Our work, our relationships, our daily routines, they all feel like pushing a boulder up a hill. We do it, we achieve something, and then we have to do it all over again. But Camus points out a crucial moment in the myth. He asks us to imagine Sisyphus as he walks back down the hill. The boulder is gone. The moment of struggle is over. It's during this descent that Sisyphus becomes conscious of his fate. He knows it's pointless. He knows he'll have to do it again. But in that moment, he becomes master of his fate. He is not a victim. He is choosing to walk down. He is choosing to rebel against the meaninglessness of his task by giving it his own meaning. He is owning his struggle. And then comes the most famous line from Camus's essay. The struggle itself toward the heights is enough to fill a man's heart. One must imagine Sisyphus happy. This is not a romanticized naive happiness. It's a fierce, defiant happiness. It's the happiness of someone who has stared into the void and said, I don't care that you're empty. I will fill myself with my own passion. My life is my own. Sisyphus finds meaning, not in the destination, not in the top of the hill, but in the struggle itself, in the act of pushing, in the act of living. This is the key. The feeling of being lost is so prevalent because we are all looking for the top of the hill. We're all looking for the moment when the boulder stays put. But existentialism tells us that moment will never come. The boulder will always roll back down. The meaning of your life isn't waiting for you at the end of a long journey. The meaning is in the journey itself. The meaning is in the pushing. So, how do we apply this? How do we take these abstract ideas and use them to live a better, more meaningful life starting today? Let's go back to Sartre and his idea of bad faith. Bad faith is when you try to escape your freedom. It's when you lie to yourself about who you are and what you're doing. A classic example is the waiter who becomes his role. He's not just a person who serves food, he's being a waiter. His movements are too precise, his politeness is too practiced. He is denying his freedom to be anything else. He's trying to hide behind his job description. He's telling himself, I'm not a free human being. I'm just a waiter. This is my essence. We all do this. We say, I can't leave this job. I'm just an accountant. We say, I can't start a band, I'm not a musician. We say, I'm just a mother or a son or a manager. These are all forms of bad faith. They are ways of hiding from our radical freedom and the responsibility that comes with it. We are trying to make ourselves into a coffee mug, a thing with a predetermined essence, because it's easier than facing the terrifying reality that we could be anything. The opposite of bad faith is authenticity. Authenticity isn't about being real, in the sense of being a certain type of person. It's about living in accordance with your freedom. It's about acknowledging that every choice you make is an act of creation. The authentic person doesn't say, I am a writer. They say, I am a person who chooses to write. The distinction is subtle but critical. One is a fixed essence, the other is a continuous act of creation. And this is a daily practice. It's about being present and making conscious choices. When you choose to get up in the morning, when you choose to go to your job, when you choose to be kind to someone, these are not things you are forced to do. They are things you choose to do. And in that choice lies your power. Now, a lot of people think this leads to a kind of selfish individualism. If I create my own meaning, doesn't that mean I can do whatever I want? This is where Simone de Beauvoir comes in, a brilliant thinker and a central figure in existentialism. She argued that our freedom is tied to the freedom of others. We can't be truly free if we live in a world where we exploit or oppress other people. To be authentic is to recognize the freedom of others and to act in a way that helps them realize their own freedom. My freedom is inextricably linked to yours. This is a profound and essential counter to the idea of a purely self-centered existentialism. We create ourselves in relation to others, and we have a responsibility to not just our own lives, but to the world we create for everyone. So, let's bring all this back to that feeling of being lost. You feel lost because you're looking for something that doesn't exist, a predetermined plan for your life. You're looking for a guidebook that was never written. The existentialist answer isn't to find that plan. The answer is to realize there is no plan and to embrace the terrifying, exhilarating reality that you get to write the plan yourself. The first step is to stop looking for meaning and to start creating it. Look at your life right now. Your job, your hobbies, your relationships. Don't ask, what is the meaning of this? Ask, what meaning can I give to this? Maybe your job feels pointless. You're just pushing papers or serving coffee. That's the absurd. But what if you rebel? What if you decide that your meaning in this job is to make your colleagues' day a little brighter? What if you decide your meaning is to be the best damn paper pusher the world has ever seen? Or to serve every customer with a smile and a moment of genuine human connection? The meaning isn't in the task. It's in your choice to approach the task with intention. What about relationships? So many people feel lost in their love lives, looking for the one, the person who will complete them. Existentialism says no one can complete you because you are already complete. You are a free, whole being who chooses to be with another free, whole being. Your love isn't about finding an essence. It's about a continuous act of creation, of choosing each other every single day. The meaning is not in the destination, marriage, or a certain number of years together, but in the daily rebellion of choosing to love and care for another person in an indifferent world. What about failure? We're so afraid of it. But in an existentialist view, failure isn't the end of a fixed essence. It's just a natural consequence of a choice. When you fail, you learn, you reassess, you make new choices. You are not a failure. You are simply a person who experienced a result of a past choice, and you are free to make a new choice. What about death? The ultimate source of our angst. The fact that all this will end. And here is where existentialism is perhaps at its most powerful. The meaning of your life is not negated by its end. In fact, our mortality is what makes our choices so urgent, so important. The fact that this is all we have, that we only get one shot, is precisely what gives every moment its weight. The silence of the universe, the inevitability of death, these are not reasons for despair. They are reasons for rebellion. They are reasons to live more fiercely, more passionately, and more authentically than you ever thought possible. So, where do we go from here? The feeling of being lost is a sign that you are on the brink of a massive breakthrough. It's a sign that you are no longer willing to accept pre-packaged meanings. It's a sign that you're ready to take on the responsibility of your own life. This is not a single act. It's a daily, minute-by-minute practice. It's the practice of confronting your freedom and embracing it. It's the practice of choosing your life rather than just living it. So, my call to action is simple. The next time you feel that feeling of being lost, that hollow, buzzing sensation, don't try to ignore it. Don't try to find a quick fix. Stop, take a moment, and remember what you've heard here today. You are not lost. You are free. The universe is silent, but your life doesn't have to be. Meaning isn't found, it's created. Embrace the struggle. Own your choices. And live authentically. Go out and create your own meaning.